we would like to acknowledge the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, MHMR of Tarrant County, MedStar Mobile Healthcare, Office of the Medical Director at MedStar, and Adapt Pharma, Incorporated.
My name is Brett Patterson. I'm with the Office of the Medical Director at MedStar. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. Because you are watching, there's a good chance that addiction has somehow impacted your life. Most often that impact comes from someone close to us, like family and friends. I know, I've experienced it in my family and I've felt the effects firsthand.
My name is Kelly Metters. I'm 33. I'm married to a police officer and I have two little girls, a 4- and a 6-year-old. I work in a hospital. We're from the area, we're from Burleson. And I guess we're here talking about my dad and just what it's like being in the family of someone with an addiction to pain pills.
After watching this video, you should be able to give examples of different types of opioids, identify the signs and symptoms of an opioid overdose, explain in simple terms how Narcan works, describe how to give Narcan to an overdose victim, and understand the importance of calling for help.
First, I just want to tell you about him because he was so much more than an addiction. He was really smart and funny. He was really fun for my whole life until he hurt his back when I was 11. He was an air traffic controller for 25 years. He was a police officer on the side when he wasn't working. On his days off, he was an officer. And then one day at work when I was 11, he fell and hurt his back, and they did back surgery on him and wrote him a prescription for Vicodin and Valium at the same time, a lot of it. The summer after I turned 12, I was home one day and I went into his bedroom to ask him a question, and he was sitting at the computer, and I asked him something and he just kind of started slumping over and seizing, and I had no idea what was going on. So I started screaming. My sister called 911. I ran across the street to get a neighbor to help us, and he fell onto the floor and continued seizing on the ground. The paramedics got there and they found his pills. There was 160 in one bottle and he had taken 70 in 3 days.
Sometimes a person may find the help they need to beat their addiction, gathering the necessary tools to get clean and stay sober. Other people may have difficulty finding that help or haven't gotten to the point where they are even looking, much less receptive. Some individuals never get the chance to find or receive help because they die from an opioid overdose. The goal of the initiative in this training video is to give them a chance to live a productive and drug-free life. Between the years 2010 and 2015, other counties in Texas saw a decline in deaths related to opioid overdose. During that same time period, Tarrant County saw their death rate from opioid-related overdose more than double. By 2016, 1 in 3 Tarrant County residents who entered substance abuse treatment were admitted for opioid-related disorders. MedStar Mobile Healthcare, the largest emergency medical services provider in Tarrant County, responded accordingly. In 2015, MedStar administered 197 doses of the opioid reversal drug Narcan. In 2016, that number had increased to 741 administrations. The rate of administration had tripled in 1 year.
He was released later on that night, I would say by 8 o'clock that night. Around 9:30, the chief of police came and took his badge away, told him he was no longer an officer. So we knew, that was when we knew that there was an issue and there was a problem. The doctor that was writing that stopped writing prescriptions for him, but he was still in pain, so he went to another doctor and they wrote him prescriptions. He was able to get them online, delivered to the house. It was a lot more relaxed back then in getting these medications, but by that point he had a full-fledged addiction.
Tarrant County MHMR responded to SAMHSA's call for proposals by forming the Tarrant Opioid Reduction and Recovery Network Advisory Committee. The committee is working with first responders and community partners to reduce the occurrence of opioid-related overdoses, increase enrollment in addiction treatment programs, and sustain existing treatment programs and facilities.
You know, it's what I told my dad in March when he overdosed. This is not the life that you planned on when you were 10 years old and picking your dream job and what you were gonna be when you grew up. You didn't say, oh, I'm gonna be an addict. I'm gonna take 15 pills a day and sleep on my couch all day and miss life and miss my kids growing up and ruin my marriage. But once you start down that road, it's so hard to get out on your own, and it's not shameful to get help. It's more shameful to not. I know it's scary to admit that you have a problem. I mean, my dad was afraid he would lose his job if he admitted he had an addiction, and he might have. But at the end of the day, I would rather lose my job than leave my kids in the position I was in to clean up my dad's throw up off the couch where we found him. That's my last picture of my dad. It was vomit on a pillow, and it was an intervention in March, and it was vomit on the floor that we found in March, and it was hidden pills. I mean, that's not what my dad pictured for his life. But these pills, they influence the way that you think.
Let's explore what opioids are and where they come from. Opium, the raw product of the opium poppy, has been used for millennia, medicinally and recreationally. The earliest historical reference is from Southwest Asia, over 5,000 years ago. For centuries, cultivation of the opium poppy spread from the Mediterranean to Asia and China via the Silk Road trade routes. The majority of poppies are grown in the mountainous regions of Central Asia, mainly in Afghanistan. In 2010, Afghanistan produced 90% of the world's illicit opium. Now, when we think of illicit opioids, we usually think of heroin. Heroin is a semi-synthetic opioid derived from morphine. Morphine is produced by refining the resin of the opium poppy through various chemical processes and comes in a variety of forms, usually as a dark-colored sticky substance called black tar, or a brownish-white powder. The drug can be self-administered by injection, smoking, or snorting. The process of making heroin begins with the opium farmers making small cuts into the skin of the poppy plant seed pods. They collect the raw opium resin once it dries. The resin is then dissolved in hot water mixed with a calcium-based solution. After the mixture settles, liquid morphine comes to the top and is siphoned away and allowed to dry. The product continues through more stages of mixing with various chemicals and is dried to produce powdered heroin.
Not all opioids are bad. Prescription opioids have many legitimate uses in the medical field.
Opioids are routinely used in medicine to control pain from surgery, fractured bones, heart attacks, and many other conditions. Unfortunately, the abuse of these medications does occur. Prescription opioid medications come in many forms, like pills, tablets, skin patches, oral lozenges, as well as oral and injectable liquids.
I just looked at him and I said, pick me. Like, stop taking these. Right now, let's go flush all these pills. And he just said, Kelly, I need them. And And he said, so, and I made him say it. I made him say, I choose the pills over you.
When someone takes too much of an opioid, it results in an overdose. Since opioids can suppress our normal reflex to breathe, some overdoses can be fatal. For the purposes of this video, we will focus on 3 signs of opioid overdose. Number 1, pinpoint pupils. Number 2, respiratory depression. And number 3, unconsciousness. As you can see, the pupil on the left would be considered normal, at approximately 4 to 5 millimeters in diameter. However, the pupil on the right would be considered pinpoint. As you can see, it is much smaller. When respiratory depression occurs, a person's respiratory rate can slow down dramatically or stop completely. When that happens, a person's skin color may change from a normal healthy appearance to an ashen gray or purple-blue hue. Unconsciousness means that a person is completely non-responsive. They will not awaken to touch, voice, or even painful stimuli. Drug use makes for compelling storylines in Hollywood movies. However, some celebrities battle opioid addiction either in public or in private. These are some notable celebrities who dealt with opioid addiction. Some of them successfully battled their addictions, while others did not. As we look at this graph from the CDC and the National Institutes of Health, we can see that there has been nearly a 6-fold increase in heroin deaths between 2006 and 2015. If we follow the blue line, it appears that in 2013 we see a sharp upturn in overdose deaths from synthetic opioids like Demerol, fentanyl, and Dilaudid, just to name a few. This is footage of an actual opioid overdose. This man has stopped breathing as evidenced by the grayish hue of his skin. Frequently, the overdose victim may have vomit obstructing the nose and mouth. This man is fortunate in that regard. As one paramedic ventilates the man, the other administers an injection of Narcan. The medication works rapidly to counter the effects of the opioid, and the man begins breathing on his own.
Put an airway in him, help him breathe, give him the Narcan. It took him a full 5 minutes to come around.
Breathe.
Big breath. Sit up.
There you go.
Sit up. Take the thing out of your mouth with your hand. There you go. Attaboy.
How did that get in there?
Good. You're back from the dead, sir.
Narcan, also known as naloxone, is a medication that temporarily reverses the effects of opioid drugs. The medication has been in use since the early 1970s, but has only recently become available to the public over the counter. Narcan can be administered by a nasal spray device or by auto-injector. The illustration on the left shows how opioids bond perfectly with specific neuroreceptors in the brain. Imagine sitting in your favorite chair that fits your body perfectly. Once the opioids take a seat, the effects of the drug begin. Naloxone enters the body and immediately pushes the opioids out of their receptors and bonds in their place. So the opioids are temporarily unable to bond. It would be like you getting shoved out of your chair by someone who then sits down in your place for 30 to 90 minutes. The body will metabolize or break down naloxone much faster than it can break down the opioids. So naloxone is only a temporary solution. Once the naloxone is metabolized by the body, the chair is empty, so to speak, and the opioids will slip back into their receptors, incapacitating the person once again. As I mentioned before, Narcan is available over the counter in 2 forms: intranasal spray and intramuscular injection. For this video, we will only demonstrate intranasal administration of the medication. Each package of Narcan nasal spray contains 2 nasal spray delivery devices. Each spray device contains a single 4 milligram dose delivered in one spray. So let's talk about Narcan, the opioid reversal medication, and how it works. In overdose management, there are 3 distinct steps. Number 1, determine if a person has overdosed on opioids and see if they are responsive. Ask the person if he or she is okay and shout their name. Shake their shoulders and firmly rub the middle of their chest. Remember, signs of an opioid overdose. The person may not wake up or respond to your voice or touch. Their breathing could be very slow, irregular, or may have stopped completely. The center part of their eye, the pupil, will be very small, sometimes called pinpoint. Roll the person over and lay them on their back to receive the dose of nasal Narcan spray. Step 2. Give Narcan nasal spray. Remove Narcan nasal spray from the box and peel back the tab to open the package. Hold the Narcan nasal spray with your thumb on the bottom of the plunger and your first and middle fingers on either side of the nozzle. Gently insert the tip of the nozzle into either nostril. Tilt the person's head back and provide support under the neck with your hand. Then, press the plunger firmly to give the complete dose of Narcan nasal spray. After the spray is administered, remove the device from the person's nostril. To me, this is the most important step. Get emergency medical help right away. Move the person onto their side in what's called the recovery position, where their hands support the head and the knee is flexed to keep the body from rolling onto his stomach. Watch the person closely. If they do not respond by waking up or responding to voice or touch, or begin breathing normally, another dose may be given. Remember, Narcan nasal spray may be dosed every 2 to 3 minutes if available. If another dose is necessary, repeat step 2 using a new Narcan nasal spray to give another dose in the other nostril. If additional sprays are available, repeat step 2 every 2 to 3 minutes until the person responds or emergency medical help is received. Witnessing an opioid overdose, especially if it's a friend or a loved one, can be a frightening experience. That's why it's so important to remember to call for help. Law enforcement agencies in the area will be trained and equipped with Narcan nasal spray to administer help to someone who has overdosed. Don't try to handle it alone. Professional help is needed and is standing by. All you have to do is call 911.
So we looked in the blinds and we could see him on the couch. And my dad's wife had the maintenance worker cut in to the door. And he came out and told us that my dad was dead on the couch. So, we waited in the hallway for about 4 hours while the police waited for someone to come take his body. And I watched him be taken out on a stretcher under a sheet. So that's our story. I wanted it to have a happy ending, but you know, it's been a 20-year story with a lot of bad and no happy ending. So my goal is that someone else can have a happy ending to their story. And my dad's legacy won't be that he died of an overdose. My dad's legacy will be that he helped people after his death. So.
Withdrawing from opioids is a process that can take several days or even a few weeks. Here we divide it into 3 distinct stages. Stage 1, sweating, muscle pain, and diarrhea. Stage 2, goosebumps, chills, vomiting, abdominal cramping. Stage 3, anxiety, nausea, insomnia. It's important to know these stages because in a person who has been addicted to opioids long term, administration of Narcan can compress all of these stages from weeks down to minutes. In the previous video, we saw an individual revived from an opioid overdose with few apparent negative effects. In this video, we will witness the negative effects of acute opioid withdrawal, which may include agitation and aggressive behavior. Let's take a moment to revisit our objectives and make sure we've covered everything. By now, you should be able to give examples of different types of opioids, identify the signs and symptoms of an opioid overdose, explain in simple terms how Narcan works, describe how to give Narcan to an overdose victim, and understand the importance of calling for help. I would like to take a moment to reiterate the importance of calling for help. Remember, an opioid overdose can be life-threatening, and Narcan nasal spray is only a temporary measure. It is not a cure. Please follow the steps we've outlined and always call 911.
When he would go on long stretches of overusing and I could tell that my mom was worried about it and mad about it and things would get tense, I would just go outside and run. And to me, that was my coping mechanism. And I always encourage people to find a healthy way to cope because there are a lot of unhealthy ways to cope. You can cope with another substance. You can cope with getting mixed in with the wrong crowd, getting into trouble. But if you can find a way to do it where it's healthy, then that's something you can carry on for your whole life. I'm 33 and I'm still running to deal with all of this, and it's therapeutic. It's time where I get to just be alone with my thoughts and just think through everything. And all I need is a pair of shoes.
We appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Knowing what to do in a medical emergency is very important. And I hope that we've given you the information that you need to assist someone who is experiencing an opioid overdose. On behalf of MedStar Mobile Healthcare, the Office of the Medical Director at MedStar, and Tarrant County MHMR, we thank you.